Harris makes appeal to middle class on economy, vowing to lower costs. In a battleground state that hoped to win back and contrasted her approach on the economy with that of former Vice President Kamala Harris unveiled the central planks of her economic agenda during her first major policy speech, focusing on how she plans to fight big corporations and bring down the costs of food, housing, and raising children. Harris tried to contrast her approach with that of former, suggesting that he was an ally of billionaires and corporate executives who would make life more expensive for working, especially with his plan to impose more drastic tariffs on imported goods. "It will mean higher prices on just about every one of your daily needs," said. "A tax on gas, a tax on food, a tax on clothing, a tax on over-the-counter medication. The economy, and especially inflation, remain a top concern among voters, and polls suggest holds an edge on the issue." But Harris's speech demonstrated her ease at explaining policy matters, especially compared to. She used concrete examples and did not allow herself to trail off into tangents. Harris also pulled from her life story, recounting her time working at A to earn spending money as a young woman while many of those she worked with were trying to support families on paltry wages. And before discussing her ideas on how to lower rent costs and reduce the price of starter homes, she described watching her mother save for more than a decade to afford their first home. Trump has appointed and Howard, two of his friends and financial backers, to oversee a transition team preparing for his potential return to power, according to a statement from his campaign released on. Neither has been associated with 2025, a conservative policy plan seized on by. The team is starting later than normal, with most transition work beginning in the spring. Trump is said to have pulled in a former who once eviscerated on a debate stage to help him prepare for the face-off, which is scheduled for time on. The vice president participated in a mock presidential debate at University on, and at least one other since then, according to several people briefed on her preparations. As visits in the state are feeling hopeful. Working against her is over 4 decades of presidential victories, interrupted only by is scheduled to appear at a rally on the latest in a series of events his campaign hopes will renew its message on fighting inflation. But maybe his own biggest roadblock in laying out that Vision news conference on ostensibly intended to discuss his economic policies took a meandering turn, with saying that he was entitled to continue his personal attacks against. On Sunday, and her running mate will campaign in western Pennsylvania ahead of their nominating convention, which starts on in Chicago. 2 more officials are leaving the administration to work on campaign. Ian, who has been a senior advisor to the principal deputy communications director, will both start with the campaign on the campaign set. Vice President Kamala Harris unspooled her economic agenda in her first major policy address, casting her vision as one for the future and former as of the past, as she argued that she would improve the lives of middle class and benefit generations of their descendants. In a roughly 30-minute speech, she painted a sharp contrast between herself and who has spent more time attacking economic policies than laying out his own. This election, I do strongly believe, is about 2 very different visions for our nation, said. One ours focused on the future and the other focused on the past. We see that contrast clearly in many ways, including when it comes to how we think about the economy. The speech reflected her fight with over how to frame the economic debate in the election. While she tries to make it a choice between competing policy agendas, with diverging possible effects on workers, families, and the nation's economic health, has tried to present